Ji, Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to Quva's free online IELTS webinar. It's a series of webinars actually, comprising four webinars in total. This first one, inshallah, will focus on the speaking module of the IELTS, and subsequent ones will focus on the other language skills जो assess होती हैं on the IELTS exam. And we are very happy to have all of you with us. And we hope that through this four webinar series आप लोग कुछ वैल्यू पाएंगे इनमें और कुछ सीखेंगे ऐसा कि जो एक्चुअली आपको आइल्स की प्रिपरेशन में मदद करेगा इंशाल्लाह और एक अच्छा स्कोर लेने में के लिए मददगार साबित होगा. So I will hand over the mic to our to the main person, the presenter, Mr. Mohammad Naeem Riaz. He has uh, a significant amount of experience teaching the IELTS, and he knows quite a bit about the test and how to approach it, and many uh, tips and tricks and strategies that can help you succeed on the test. So मैं limelight shift करता हूँ सर आपकी तरफ. Please.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And I hope you all are doing fine. Uh, Sir, could you please confirm? I mean, if we are ready, then I think we should begin.
Yeah, I think we are ready because मैंने रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट कर दी है
Mhm.
और आई थिंक हमें कोई अराउंड 15 पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने ज्वाइन कर लिए विच इज़ आई थिंक अ गुड इनफ नंबर टू बिगिन. प्लस वी आर
Yes.
ऑलरेडी 7 minutes ओवर टाइम, सो people will keep joining, but I think we should start.
Okay. Yes, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. So, once again, I would like to welcome you all to this free webinar series on IELTS that we have mutually decided to do. And I would sincerely like to thank Quva Pro and Sarumar for inviting me to do this series. To tell you about myself, this is Mohammad Naeem Riaz, and I have been teaching IELTS for about 3 years. Currently, I'm working as an IELTS instructor and an interview coach, and I have been teaching English to tertiary level students or university level students for about 5 years. So I won't go into so many things about myself. Let's quickly jump into the business or things that we really need to discuss. So um,
Should
basically,
I play the
uh,
slides?
yes, please.
Yeah, so I think we should also turn off our videos ताकि वो bandwidth मुतासिर ना हो और ऑडियो और वो जो स्क्रीन
Yes, sure.
शेयर.
Let me. Sure.
थैंक यू सर.
You're welcome. Okay, so basically, we are going to be having 4 sessions. Today, we are going to talk about the speaking module, and then Sunday, we are coming or we are returning to talk about the listening module. Next Friday, we are meeting again to talk about the reading module, and then next Sunday, finally, we'll meet to talk about the writing module, and that's where we will wrap up this webinar series. So, this also makes this distinction clear. IELTS comprises of four modules or four skills that are assessed. Um, and those are, of course, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And today, just as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be talking about the speaking module. First, let us quickly discuss the objectives of this series because it is important for us to have this understanding of what is it that we are going to do throughout these 4 days. What is the purpose behind that? What is the motivation behind that? Before we delve into today's session, which is on speaking, just as I mentioned earlier. So, as far as the objectives are concerned, those are basically to familiarize you with fundamentals of all the four skills. Those are, of course, listening, reading, and write, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and then to help you in identifying a launching pad for you people to be able to prepare for the exam independently. So I believe that after attending these 4 sessions, you should be able to prepare for the exam on your own. Then to reflect on key strategies for each module or skill for better performance during the exam, because it is your strategies, it is your understanding of uh, certain techniques or tips or tricks that I think help you at the end of the day. I have been teaching IELTS for about 3 years, and this is something that I've experienced those participants who understand these strategies well. They are sure to score 6.5 or 7 bands very easily. And I have also had a chance to interact with participants whose English language, whose understanding of English language would be wonderful, but because they're not so much comfortable when it comes to strategies or tips or techniques, unfortunately, they would have to stop at 6 or 6.5 bands. So, moving forward, I would like to discuss the outcomes of this series of 4 sessions. So, as far as the outcomes are concerned, again, the idea is that we want you to be, we want to enable you to prepare for the IELTS exam independently and also identify weak areas and convert them into potentials for you, um, convert them into potentials um, so that you can do well on your exam. So these are the outcomes of these 4 sessions. So moving forward, because today's session is dedicated to the speaking module, let's have a quick look at session's objectives. What are the objectives of today's session? Uh, Basically, in today's session, we are going to discuss all the 3 parts of IELTS speaking. IELTS speaking comes with 3 parts. There are 3 parts. Part number 1 is called interview and introduction. Part number 2 is called Q-card. Part number 3 is called relevant discussion. There is nothing to worry about. I'm going to talk to you about all these things in detail. Then the next objective is to help you people in understanding the assessment criteria for optimized performance during the test, because the idea is that if you are not familiar with the assessment criteria, if you are not sure of what is it that you are going to be assessed on, then how is it that you can perform well? So we are going to be taking a look at the assessment criteria as well. Then, to highlight key strategies and common mistakes, very important common mistakes for each part, for you people to have focused approach when you're preparing independently after this webinar series is over. So these are some of the objectives of today's session. Before we again delve into the speaking module, I would like you people to know that IELTS paper-based is no longer being offered in Pakistan. There is just IELTS computer-based, number one. Number two, if you would ask me on, or if you would seek my opinion on which one of these is better, I would certainly argue that IELTS computer-based is far better or much better than IELTS paper-based. There used to be so many complexities and complications involved in IELTS paper-based, but ever since IELTS paper-based is, it's over, and ever since we have moved to IELTS computer-based, we have seen that there are so many conveniences. It's much more accessible, and in addition to all these things, IELTS computer-based results are available literally within 24 to 48 hours, whereas earlier we used to wait for 14 to 15 days. So that's that. Then another thing that I would really like to discuss with you is that there are 4 modules, as I mentioned earlier: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Speaking would be held separately, and listening, reading, and writing, also abbreviated as LRW, would be held separately. So listening, reading, and writing, it's going to be, LRW is going to be held separately without any gap. It's going to be of 2.5 to 3 hours. Then, as far as speaking is concerned, it is going to be of 20 minutes, and that's where I would want us to move forward towards the overview of the speaking module. And around this, our conversation for today's session would revolve. IELTS speaking overview. Duration. As far as the duration is concerned, IELTS speaking is going to be basically of minimum 12 to 13 minutes. Maximum, it can go up to 20 minutes. And it can be online, it can be in person, depending on the availability of the examiner, and also
Sir,
depending on
sir,
the availability.
sorry, let me
Yes, yes,
interrupt you.
yes,
I'm
please.
really sorry, but one of the participants has complained कि उनको slides shift होती हुई नहीं दिख रही. क्या ये
Oh,
प्रॉब्लम आपको को भी फेस करनी पड़ रही है? हम स्लाइड्स यहाँ से आगे चला रहे हैं, बट क्या आप लोग उसको आगे चलता हुआ देख सकते हैं?
yes,
या
we
आप
should be on slide number 5 at the moment.
या कैन आर यू सीइंग द फर्स्ट स्लाइड? Are you guys still seeing the first slide? ओके, ओनली द फर्स्ट स्लाइड इज विजिबल। ठीक है, थैंक यू फॉर पॉइंटिंग दिस आउट। आप लोगों ने इसको टाइम से पॉइंट आउट कर दिया। हम इसको आई थिंक प्रेजेंटेशन मोड से निकाल के अगर प्ले करेंगे तो शायद ये प्रॉब्लम खुद ब खुद एड्रेस हो जाएगी। सो लेट मी वेरी क्विकली शेयर द स्क्रीन अगेन एंड
No worry,
आप
take your time.
कंफर्म कीजिएगा इफ यू गाइस कैन नाउ सी द screen, the slides shifting. Do you see them shifting now in the मतलब when we come out of the presentation mode? ओ जबरदस्त। सो आई थिंक हम इसी से आगे बढ़ेंगे। सॉरी फॉर द इंटरप्शन, लेकिन ये ज़रूरी थी, सॉरी।
No, it was very important, and I think you addressed it timely. We are on slide number 5 at the moment.
यस यस, दैट इज करेक्ट।
Yes. So we were talking about the overview of IELTS speaking. So I was telling you that as far as the duration is concerned, it is going to be of minimum 12 to 13 minutes. Maximum it is going to be of 20 minutes. And then as I was also telling you that it can be online, it can be in person, depending upon the availability of the examiner and also availability of slots. Now, I was I told you earlier that there are going to be three parts. In IELTS speaking, there would be three parts. Part number one is called interview and introduction. Part number two is called cue card. Part number three is called relevant discussion. I'm repeating again. Part number one is called interview and introduction. Part number two is called cue card. Part number three is called relevant discussion. Now, before we talk about these parts in detail, before I tell you about what is it that each part entails or that each part demands from you as a candidate, it is important for us to take a quick look at the assessment criteria. What is it that the examiners are looking for when they're evaluating you? What is it that examiners have in mind when they're evaluating you? What is it that examiners are thinking of when you are doing the speaking test? So let's take a quick look at that. So as far as the assessment criteria is concerned, there are four parameters. There are four parameters. Number one is fluency and coherence. The first one is fluency and coherence. The second one is lexical resource, which basically is a fancy name of vocabulary. The third one is grammar. And the fourth one is pronunciation. The first one is fluency and coherence. The second one is lexical resource. The third one is grammar. And the fourth one is pronunciation. Let's talk about fluency and coherence. Now, fluency, we are under this falsified impression, we are under this unfavorable impression that fluency means speaking very fast. And literally speaking, that's untrue. That's not true. This is a mistakable idea. We are mistaken when we are perceiving that fluency means speaking very fast. Fluency simply means speaking at a moderate pace. You don't have to be very fast. You don't have to be very slow. You simply have to be speaking at a moderate pace. You have to maintain a natural flow, to tell you the truth. Now, if I share my personal experience with you, I took the exam back in 2022. And truth be told, I did not take the exam because I wanted to teach it in future. At that time, I was teaching at Jauddin University as an academic English instructor. And I personally wanted to travel abroad, but for certain reasons, I had to withdraw. I had to take a gap, and I might want to decide on it in years down the line. But when I took the test, I did not do it, just as I mentioned earlier, because I wanted to take the exam. I did it because I wanted it for myself. And at that time, I know it very well, my fluency was not as good as it is today. And yet, I managed to get 8.5 overall in the speaking module out of 9, which means that it's not the game of speaking very fast. It is the game of understanding the marking parameters, maintaining a natural flow. So as far as fluency is concerned, you don't have to be very fast. You don't have to be very slow. You simply have to maintain a natural flow. You have to speak at a moderate pace. And linked to this is coherence. Linked to fluency is coherence. So there's something that I think I should have mentioned earlier. So if there are four parameters, fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammar and pronunciation, grammar and then pronunciation. So it means that each parameter accounts for 25% marks. Each parameter accounts for 25% marks. So fluency and coherence together account for 25% marks because these come under the same banner. So linked to fluency is coherence, and coherence means the ability of connecting sentences, the ability of connecting ideas together. And for this, I highly recommend you to please um, go through the list of discourse markers or linkers or transition signals. This is something that you can um, look up yourself. It's not something very difficult considering that we are living in the age of artificial intelligence. This is something that you can do independently, but you should be having familiarity of some linking devices, some transition signals. Make sure that you are not using them excessively. Make sure that you are not enforcing their presence in your spoken discourse. But you should be familiar with words such as therefore, however, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the contrary, on one hand, on the other hand, so on and so forth. Right? Moving forward, the second marking parameter is lexical resource, which, as I told you earlier, is a fancy name of vocabulary. It is a fancy name of vocabulary. Now, IELTS speaking is evaluating your understanding of things that are social, things that are personal, things that are academic, etc., etc. That in turn suggests that you should be able to use pertinent vocabulary relevant to each topic coming your way. So part number one might be talking about hometown, maybe, or it might be talking about your use or your interaction with artificial intelligence. Then in the second part, you might be asked to comment on something new that you experienced last year. Then part number three might expect you to comment on new things, new discoveries, new explorations. Now, if you take a closer look, these all are very different topics, which in turn suggests that you would be required to be speaking on uh, each topic with with you having access to pertinent vocabulary, relevant vocabulary concerned with each topic. So you should be having, um, set of words linked to each topic, and this is not something that you can expect to understand, or you can expect to have command over literally overnight. It takes, quoting Winston Churchill, tears, toil, and trouble. It takes tears, toil, and trouble. So you will have to work day and night. You will have to read a lot. You will have to listen to things. I'm going to comment on in detail what is it that you can do to improve your spoken discourse or your speaking skills. Because beyond IELTS speaking exam, you would be needing access to specially spoken discourse in professional settings when you would be communicating with fellow colleagues, when you would be communicating with senior management, so on and so forth. So I think IELTS speaking is not limited to IELTS only, it is beyond IELTS and other such tests. And this is something that I tell my students here in the office as well. Moving forward, the third parameter is grammar and the fourth parameter is pronunciation. I've put them together in the slide because of time constraints. So grammar, of course, we are again constantly under this impression that's how we are taught at school level. Then moving forward, that's how we are taught when we are in the college. That English revolves around 12 basic structures, four from the past tense, four from the present tense, and four from the future. But to share with you, and you would be surprised to learn that English comes with more than 50 structures. English as a language comes with more than 50. So you should know, you should be able to use these simple past, present, and future tenses. You should be able to have access to their passive forms. You should be able to have access to direct, indirect speech. You should be able to have access to conditionals. You should be able to have access to four different types of sentences, including simple, compound, complex, and complex compound. I mean, there is a lot to explore when you talk about grammar. And this is exactly what your examiner is looking for. This is exactly what your examiner expects when he or she is talking about you, about something and about you, especially in the first part. So your examiner expects you to be able to use a variety of tenses and sentences. Then, as far as pronunciation is concerned, this is something that, of course, we all struggle with for being Pakistanis. This is something that we should be working on by listening to things in English, by reading again. And again, these are some of those things that I would. Now, you would be wondering how you can improve your pronunciation by reading, but you can do that. How? For example, if you're coming across some word which is difficult, you're instantly going to look for its meaning online. And when you're going to look for its meaning online, you might end up playing uh, playing the audio version of that word, and that in turn would help you in improving pronunciation of that word as well. So by reading too, you can improve your pronunciation. Now, moving forward, let's talk about all the three parts. And let's particularly talk about part number one, which is called interview and introduction. Now, as soon as you enter the examination room, your examiner would greet you, you would greet the examiner, your examiner would take a look at your identification, during which you might want to show your passport or identification card, depending on that, which you have used to book the test. And after this is over, that we also refer to zero part one begins, which is called interview and introduction. Uh, During this part, there would be three topics, 2 to 3 topics, having 4 to 6 questions each, and you will not be having any time to think about the question being asked. There would be a question, and you have to immediately answer. And basically, during this part, your examiner expects you to comment on things related to you yourself, as the title suggests, interview and introduction. You would be required to comment on your past, your present, your future, depending on what kind of question is being asked. You would be required or expected to comment on your likes and your dislikes. For example, if let's suppose your examiner is talking about your hometown, so your examiner might ask you, tell me about your hometown. What is it that you like about your hometown? Is there anything that you don't like about your hometown? What is it that you think should be changed in your hometown? Similarly, if your examiner is talking about um, uh, your shopping habits, then your examiner might ask you, what is it that you shop a lot when you're going shopping? And how many shopping malls are there in your hometown or in your locality? And what kinds of shops do you like to visit? So again, the idea is that it all goes back to you. It all goes back to your likes, your dislikes, your choices. And now, one common mistake that examinees, that students do, that participants do, that candidates do, that they start giving one-word answers. For example, if the examiner is asking, "Do you like your hometown?" the student would simply say, "Yes, I like my hometown." No, this is not what your examiner is looking for. Your examiner, basically, whenever I teach my students, I tell them that it's, and I'm also borrowing this analogy from somewhere, uh, that it's like a conversation that you're having at a coffee table. So if your examiner is asking you that if there's anything that you like in your hometown or about your hometown, then you should go into a little detail of what is it that you're saying or sharing, right? Uh, Basically, you need to be speaking naturally. And when you're doing that, so some of your answers would be very short, some of your answers might go um, a little beyond that precise version, which is expected in the first part. But the idea is that you need to be speaking naturally. Take it as a conversation. So you can have, of course, some short answers that, just as I mentioned earlier, and some answers could be extended. Then range of topics, as far as this is concerned, it could be very wide. So it could be, the examiner might talk to you about some mundane ideas such as shoes and shopping habits. And then he or she might talk to you about some lofty ideas such as your interaction with artificial intelligence and your interaction with video games if you have been playing. So it could be anything. And sometimes you're sure to get that topic which maybe you're not familiar with, or something that you have not really experienced, or something that you're not sure of. So during that stage, if you think that you can comment on it without having experienced it, then just go ahead. And if you think that you're not able to comment on it, or you're not in a position to comment on it because you have not interacted with that thing. For example, if you're not interacted with video games, then be honest and tell your examiner that you're afraid that you have not interacted with video games. But better for you would be to um, you know to go for affirmation. Better for you would be to have familiarity in advance of topics that you are going to encounter during the first part. For example, and IELTS never assesses you on that which is completely isolated, which is completely distinct. Now, video games is something that we all are familiar with, something that was trendy and that has since been trendy. Uh, I mean, since COVID days, right? Then artificial intelligence is something that we have all been discussing for the last 2 to 3 years. So these are not some of those areas that you should be hesitant to speak about. Better for you would be to go ahead and comment on the topic, and that is only possible if you're familiar with topics that you're going to be confronting, that you're going to be asked. And it's not something to worry too much about, because again, it all goes back to you, your personal experience. And if you think that you're not able to comment on it based on your personal experience, then think of it keeping in mind any of your friends, maybe, or keeping in mind any story that you may have read, any movie that you may have watched, any series that you may have watched. I mean, again, I would reiterate that these are not those topics that you would not be familiar with. So, uh, if it requires you to make up stories, then do so. One more thing, another mistake that students commit, for example, to give you my own example, I have recently moved from Karachi to Islamabad. If I am doing the test and my examiner is asking, let's suppose it's a general question, if my examiner is asking, okay, Naeem, where are you coming from? And I tell him or her that I'm coming from Islamabad, then he or she would ask me the details and likes and dislikes about the place I'm coming from. He or she might not even know where Islamabad is. Let's assume it for a while. And so when he or she would ask me about things related to Islamabad, then I'm afraid I might not be familiar as much as I'm comfortable talking about Karachi. So better for me would be to say that I'm coming from Karachi, or I hail from Karachi, right? Because I think that I would be the better position to comment on Karachi than talking about Islamabad. So go for that which you're comfortable with, because again, your examiner is never going to come back to verify whether what you are saying is right or wrong. You could be anywhere. You might have different interactions. You might have had different experiences, and that's absolutely okay. There is nothing to worry about. So this is one of the common mistakes that students make. Talk about those things that you're comfortable about, that you think you can comment on very easily. Then, as far as common initial topics are concerned, initially your examiner might talk to you about um, or might ask you whether you work or study. And after that, your examiner might talk to you about your hometown or your accommodation, but it may happen, it may not happen. Your examiner might end up talking to you about any of these topics. And it is also possible, just as it happened in my case, that your examiner might end up talking to you about none of these topics. So it's not something given, it's not something uh, tangible. It may happen or it may not happen, but initial few topics could be home, hometown, work, and or studies. Now let's move forward and talk about the second part, which is called QGuard. I would like to believe that your understanding of part one is clear. If there are
Yeah,
any
I
questions,
think,
I would, yes.
yeah, Thank you for asking that. I think it would be nice to have some input from the participants, if they have any questions, or just if they want to comment uh, on how well they have understood the first part.
Yes, and if you want me to address anything once again, I would be more than happy to do so.
Yeah, please, the floor is open. You can comment. You can also unmute yourselves and ask your questions verbally. So yeah, please feel free. And you could also react with thumbs up and जो feature होते हैं Zoom के. So जी, we have a raised hand. Hiba, do you want to ask something?
Hi, sir. I'm Hiba Zahir.
जी.
So
Hello,
I
Hiba,
have
how
a
are you?
question.
Yes. Mhm.
I'm fine. Thank you, sir. So I have a question regarding the explanations of these introductory questions. Like sometimes if they ask us, like, if they ask me, like, tell me about a hobby, and I tell them that cooking is my hobby, for example, it's not actually. So how would I make this conversation a bit more longer? Like one of the approaches which I went through was the PPF approach, which was the past, present, and future approach. But I just want some more clarity on that and how we can make our conversation look natural and flowy while not missing on some details or not being too much detailed in our answers.
That's a very good question, and this is something. A part of it is something that I was going to talk about, or I was going to discuss during our conversation on the second part, PPF approach. I'm going to tell you that this approach may work and it may not work because there are so many YouTube channels suggesting that this is the approach that you should be using, especially when you're dealing with the second part. And it's, allow me to say, categorically wrong. It does not work all the time, and most of the times, in fact, it fails in producing the desired results. So,
Yeah.
to go back to your question, because considering that we are talking about the first part at the moment, and you have asked how do you extend your answers. Let's suppose if your examiner is asking you what is your hobby, then how just as I told you earlier, that some of your answers are going to be short or shorter, and then some of your answers would um, end up having some extension or extended explanation. So you could say that, for example, well, in my free time, I like to cook, and this has been my hobby for the last couple of years, and I usually cook on weekends, but not all the time. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I something else, something like that. You can go for, because it's a conversation. It's not an interview. It's not a formal interview. It's rather a semi-formal conversation, because an informal conversation would be that where there is a dialogue. Yes, there is a dialogue, but you cannot um, ask any question back from the examiner in this case. So that is why it's a semi-formal conversation. So that's how you can have your answers extended. And please make sure that your answers are not so much extended that it becomes tedious, it becomes boring, it becomes monotonous. Make sure that there is proper logical organization, and that is, of course, only possible if you're natural, if you're being true to yourself, and if, again, you have understood the marking criteria well, and again, if you're taking it as a conversation and not as an interview. So if I were sitting, for example, in a formal interview, then I would end up saying, okay, my hobby is cooking, and that would be it. But in this case, because it's a semi-formal conversation, better for you would be to go into extended explanation and a little, and that should suffice. And then the other clause of your question, PPF, past, present, and future, that is something that I would really like to address when we would talk about the second part. I think, Sir Umer, we should move forward and talk about the
Yes,
second part.
let's
What
do.
do you think
Let's
about
do.
that?
If there are any further questions, we can also take them at the end. Let's move on. Yeah, we are now on the second part.
Yes, right. So part number two, which is called QGuard. Now, before anything, and before I forget, I would really like to discuss this PPF technique. Okay, first let me tell you what is it that part number 2 is looking for. In the second part, what happens is that your examiner gives you a cue card. There is a card. You have a minute to think about the topic, and on that card is written a topic with one major question and 4 to 5 minor questions or subsidiary questions. Right? For example, describe a describe a piece of furniture that you own. You should say what is it, when you bought it, uh, how long have you been having it, and then explain if you would like to use it in future. Very simple question. I just came up with it, uh, looking at the table which is placed in front of me. So, but it's actually a question that is often asked. So if I were to comment on this question or this cue card, I would simply jump into talk about this study table placed in front of me. So there would be this card given to you with one major question, 3 to 4 or 5 minor questions or subsidiary questions. You would be having a minute to think about the topic, and then you would have to speak about that topic for 1 to 2 minutes. And better for you would be to not stop until your examiner stops you. Better for you, I'm repeating, would be to not stop until your examiner stops you. And giving a personal example again, I and my friend did the test together. And her content, let me tell you, I would say her fluency is better than mine. It would still be better than mine. At that time, I told you my fluency was not as good as it is today. So her content was exhausted literally within 60 to 70 seconds. And then because the test was being recorded, it was an audio recording, it was not a video recording. The examiner waved at her, telling her that please speak more. And she did. She could barely speak for 10 to 20 more seconds. And when the results came, she got 7 bands. And I'm telling you that her fluency is and was better than mine. But when it was my turn, I spoke for good 2 minutes. I was stopped by my examiner, although I was about to end, but I was still stopped by my examiner. I was about to end. The reason why I was about to end, because I had my answer logically organized, and I will tell you how can you organize your answer. So my examiner stopped me, and when the results came, I got 8.5. So that's the difference. That is why I'm telling you that you should stop. You should be able to speak for 2 minutes, and you should stop when your examiner stops you. You should never stop uh, in the middle. Better for you would be to keep speaking throughout those 2 minutes. But make sure that you're not repeating the content. I will tell you how you're going to manage that in a while. Now, PPF approach. People say that you should go for this past, present, future approach. And if anything, it cannot give you more than 5.5 to 6 bands. My students have gotten, alhamdulillah, 6.5, 7, 7.5, and even 8. And mind you, I would deal with students coming with not so good background. When I'm saying that not so good background, I don't mean to comment on their intellectual capacity or their intellectual aptitude. The idea here is the command over English language. And when so we have to work on two things. Our effort becomes twofold. We don't have to work on their language skills only. We also have to work on their uh, IELTS preparation. And so if they are able to get 6.5, 7, and 7.5, then you're missing out on a lot of things by following this so-called PPF approach. What does that PPF approach suggest? That you should talk about something by linking it to the past, then you should move into the present, then you should move towards the future of that thing, whatever it is. Now, let me give you two quick examples. You have to, don't focus on the screen, just listen to me. Let's suppose there are two cards. For example, one card suggests, describe an occasion when you learned something new. You should say what it was, what did you learn, how long did it take you to learn, and then explain what benefits did it have upon learning. Now, if you think about it, this entire cue card, this entire question is in the past. And if you are commenting on it, following that PPF approach, if anything, you are losing your credibility. you're uh, you're compromising on the marking parameter relevant to coherence, marking parameter relevant to grammar, marking parameter relevant to vocabulary. Now, let me give you another example. Describe a job that you would like to do in future. You should say what job that would be, what kind of skills would you be would you require, what kind of qualifications would be needed, and then explain how do you think you can get that job and whether you can get that job or not and why. Right? This entire cue card is related to something which is going to happen in future. How could you apply that PPF approach here? So when those so-called uh, tutors come on YouTube saying that you should be following PPF approach, they are misleading you, they're misguiding you, they are suggesting that which is not agreeable, which is not appropriate. Again, I'm not denying all of their teachings, but again, the idea is that if you take a closer look at the marking parameter, it's then that you understand that what's happening in the background and what is in the making of these questions and in the making of this test altogether. So part number 2 comes with this, where you have to basically think about some topic for 1 minute and then you have to comment on it for 1 to 2 minutes. And as I told you earlier, you should be basically, you should not stop until your examiner stops you. Now we would move forward and talk about, take a look at these sample questions. Yes. So the first question reads, describe an occasion when your entire family got together. You should say when it was, what was the occasion about, how many people were there, and then explain how did you feel about it. Again, it's in the past. Question number 2, describe someone. So if you take a closer look, you would see that questions are beginning with the word describe. The major question begins with the word describe. Describe someone who you admire. So this is in the present. There is no past, there is no future. You should say who they are, how do you know them, what do they do, and then explain why do you admire them so much. This is in the present. So there is a consistent pattern in the making of these questions. The first question begins with the word describe. Then there are WH questions, 3 to 4 questions. There would be WH. Then the last question would be beginning with the word explain. So these days, there is this trendy cue card, describe a rule that you would like to introduce in your country, right? Describe a rule that you would like to introduce in your country. You should say what rule that is, who would be benefited from that rule, how that rule can be implemented, and then explain if there exists any system to have that rule implemented or something like that. And by tomorrow, I will share a list of some 20 cue cards that are being asked, especially in 2026. And that list would help you a lot in preparing for the IELTS exam if you're preparing independently. And then, of course, if you are going to do the preparation with us, we would be doing mock tests with you. We would be sharing so many cue cards with you, and not just those cue cards. We would also be sharing topics that come in parts 1 and 3. Okay. Now, moving forward, the next slide, wherein we are going to discuss how to use the preparation time. Just as I told you earlier, you are given 1 minute to think about it, about the topic. You are given a minute to think about the topic, and then you have to speak about that topic for 1 to 2 minutes. So please don't write sentences. You are given a pen and a paper, and you can make notes during that 1 minute if you want to. Don't write sentences, write keywords, then make up a story. Make up a story, follow a pattern with proper organization, with proper structured organization. And that structure would suggest that you should have a proper introduction, then you should have 3 bullet points, or 3 points linked to bullets given in the question. Then of course you should have a proper conclusion that goes back to the question linked to explanation. Look at this question, for example, giving the example from the previous slide. Describe someone who you admire. This is the first question. There are bullets. Who they are, bullet number 1. How do you know them, bullet number 2. What do they do, bullet number 3. And then the last question says, and then explain why do you admire them so much. So that's how, keeping these guiding principles, these guiding questions in mind, you're going to design your notes with keywords, not sentences. And please keep in mind that your notes should not be linked to bullet points identified in the question only. You can come up with anything and everything that you think you are comfortable speaking about, as long as it is linked to the major question. So if you're talking about someone who you admire and you're not following the bullet points mentioned in the cue card, you're following your own story, you're following your own ideas, that's absolutely okay, as long as you're able to talk about someone who you admire. Okay. Moving forward, let's talk about the third part, relevant discussion. Now, this is again where most of the participants go wrong. Why? Because by now, maybe participants are exhausted, maybe they just want the test to be over. I don't know. But where they're supposed to speak more, they speak less, and where they could have gotten 6 or 6.5, they end up getting 5 or 5.5. And in some cases, in worst cases, where they could have gotten 7 or 7.5, they end up getting 6 or 6.5, and that's something wrong that they do to themselves. I'll tell you how we have to really work on it. Take these questions as academic essays. And let me tell you, where part number 1 questions are, where questions for part number 1 are dealing with social and personal things, part number 3 questions are dealing with things that are academic. For example, you might be asked, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using artificial intelligence? Or do you think it is important for us to have role models? Or maybe, do you think that family is better than having friends? Or maybe, do you think that it is important for families to have gatherings on occasions, right? Or maybe, what kind of things do people do when their families get together? Now, it's not about your family, it's about families in general, the structure of family in general. Do you think that the structure of family is disappearing in some countries? Very common question, right? So these are some of the questions that you would be asked in the third part. And you should take it as an opinion essay. And please don't speak less for questions in the third part. You should be able to speak more. You should take each question as an essay. You should have proper points to comment on the question that has been asked or that is being asked. You should be having 3 to 4 relevant points. So if you're being asked to comment on the advantages and disadvantages, then you should discuss 2 advantages and then you should discuss 2 disadvantages, right? So this is the approach. This is the kind of approach that you should be adopting. This is the kind of understanding that you should be having. This is the strategy that you should be holding, especially when you're dealing with the third part. Students speak less during the third part, and that's where they lose scores. And one more thing, the difficulty level during the third part of questions continues to increase, and it continues to increase until your capacity is exhausted. So maybe your capacity is exhausted by the time your examiner thinks you have reached band 7, or maybe by the time you have reached band 7.5 or 8 or 8.5. It's not work it's not going to work as systematically as I'm uh, suggesting at the moment, because your examiners would go back to listen to your recording, and then they would be marking you, and then they would be looking at those things that they might not have had a chance to look at when they were doing your test. But part number 3, I would say, is a game changer. So you should hold on, you should speak more, you should take each question very seriously, you should have firm grounding, you should have proper opinions on the questions that are being asked in the third part. Okay.
Sir, there
Now,
is a question. Should we take the question at the end, or would you rather have it now?
I'm just going to wrap the presentation up in about within, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes, and then I think we can move toward questions. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's great. Koratulen, we'll take your question at the end. We are just about to end.
Right. Moving forward, because I think I've commented on all the important things. The next thing that I wanted to discuss with you, how you can improve your speaking skills. So you should be consistent when you're practicing. Then you should be listening to TED Talks and follow authentic YouTube channels. I'm repeating it. I cannot emphasize on this enough. Please follow authentic YouTube channels. Uh, you should be following this. There's this channel called English Speaking Success, and then uh, BBC Learning English. It's also a very useful YouTube channel that you should be subscribing to and then listening to. I'm not their brand ambassador, but these are some of those channels that have helped my students, and these channels would help you as well. And listen to TED Talks. Initially, listen to them following subtitles, and then after a while, you would realize that you are able to follow these things without following subtitles. I'm going to not spend too much time because um, you know there are time constraints. Then use artificial intelligence. Use artificial intelligence. Again, this is something that I cannot emphasize on this enough. If you have opted to join this webinar series on IELTS, then I would like to presume that you all would be having enough command over English language. Using artificial intelligence is all about prompt engineering. This is something that uh, I cannot comment on in detail, but use artificial intelligence. It helps you a lot in improving your vocabulary and correcting your grammar if you're giving proper prompts, if you are feeding proper prompts. Then what are the key takeaways from this session? If you would seek my perspective, then I think my key takeaways would be that understanding of each part is crucially important, and then you cannot get good scores if you're not clear about the assessment criteria. And also, without consistent practice, you cannot expect to get band 7 or above. And then stay composed and natural, just as I have been mentioning during the test, on the test day. So that's from my side. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy to entertain them or respond to them.
Ji,
The forum
Koratulen,
is,
you want to ask
yes.
your question by
Yeah.
opening your mic?
Mm-hmm. Assalamu alaikum,
Please go
everyone.
ahead.
My question
Walaikum
is that
assalam.
how important is it the content what we are speaking? So, do we have to be real us or the real opinion of ours, or it could be a made-up story which is generally liked by everyone or liked by. So, the better question will be: is the answers biased by the opinion of of the examiner as well?
That's,
Is that the
I
case?
would say it's a very, very good question. Thank you so much for asking. Uh, Generally speaking, no. Your answer is not guided by or directed by the biasness of your examiner, and that is why it is not included in the parameters of in marking parameters, because otherwise your evaluation would be subjective. As far as marking parameters are concerned, those include pronunciation, grammar, lexical resource or vocabulary, and then there is coherence and fluency. Now, if I share my personal experience with you, and the reason why I'm going back to my personal experience is that it is here that you would believe in the credibility, or you would know that whatever is coming is credible, because otherwise I can cite any random student and you might or might not believe it. So in my case, in the third part, the discussion moved towards the difference or distinction between capitalism and socialism. And uh, I don't remember exactly, but the examiner asked me something like something related to marginalization of certain classes. And I was very vocal about my opinion. And I told her, yes, there exists class stratification, and this is something that we cannot overcome due to certain inequities or inequalities, so on and so forth. So, no, your answers are not supposed to be colored by what is it that your examiner thinks. It's all dependent upon the marking parameters that I've already discussed in detail.
Ji Koratal, and I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, right. Thank you.
you're most welcome. Thank you for that very, very good question. Acha, do we have more questions, please? Ji,
Am I
Heba
audible,
has
sir?
Yeah, let's
Yes,
go
you're
with
audible.
Fahad, and then we'll go with Heba. Ji Fahad, please.
Sorry, sir, I did not manage to raise my hand because I could not find that option, so I indirectly had to unmute. I apologize for that.
That's fine. We understand.
Okay, thank you. Sir, I'd like to have, you would say, some one or two questions in a jiffy. What do you suggest about our body language? Does only speech matter, or our body language is also noticed by the examiners in our speaking session? And secondly, I would like to know that have you observed any set criteria from the examiners that they judge any participant right from the start that, oh, this one won't be able to perform too much. Okay, we'll have a decide band marking and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, uh, I mean, it's a given. It's something which is natural. Your body language is something that should exude some confidence, that should exude conviction, that should tell the examiner that you want to have a conversation and you're not taking this test as a test. And then, of course, when you're going for a formal interview for some job or for university and so on and so forth, then too, you would be having your body language formed in such a way that despite having certain kind of preparation, your body language exudes some confidence. So it may or may not matter, but better for you would be to exude confidence, exude conviction, and tell your examiner that you're going to, you know, you're going to change the game for yourself by doing this. Now, to respond to the other question, uh, I've never seen some such thing. Again, the idea is that people are under this falsified impression that there may be biasness or something like that, but I've not seen that. Uh, Results that I have had of my students would be, and that we would receive, they would be very close to what we would speculate or what we would expect. And that in turn suggests that both, uh, I mean, whether you're taking the test from British Council or IDP, it doesn't matter. But there is this consistent, standardized set parameter that you can find online. You would simply need to type IELTS speaking band descriptors, and that would tell you what is it that your examiners are looking for. And those band descriptors would revolve around those marking parameters that I have already discussed with you, including coherence and fluency, pronunciation, grammar, and lexical resource. It's not that your examiner would decide in the first part. Um, they would do the whole test, and but again, the idea is that if you're uh, if you're having this one word long answer in the first part, and then you're constantly speaking during the second part, and then you're constantly speaking in the third part, that would certainly exude some inconsistency. But again, the idea is that if someone is able to speak for good 2 minutes in the second part, and then he or she is able to speak pretty well during the third part, then it is obvious that he or she would be fine in the first part. So you need to go through these band descriptors provided online on the websites of British Council and then IELTS as well. And those descriptors would give you a very clear idea of what is it that your examiners are looking for. I hope that has answered your question. I would rather say that I hope I have answered both your questions.
Yeah, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll go with Hiba and then with Mirza Wasim. So Hiba, you're going next, and then Wasim.
Okay, so my question is regarding the total time duration that we are provided for this speaking test. And is it like the case that it is divided into certain time durations for all the three parts? And specifically for the last part, in which we have to answer the relevant, for a relevant topic, right? So, how much time do we get to answer this, or do we get certain time for its preparation as well? And then, like, I just want some clarity on this time duration.
Okay, so one thing that I think I should make clear, in case I forgot to mention it during our discussion, because time was running fast like anything. So the third part would have questions relevant to that which is discussed in the second part. So if the second part was about your admiration or someone who you admire, so the third part would most likely be about models or influence. And if the second part is about an experience that you may have had while working for some team, then third part would have questions related to teamwork and communication skills and critical thinking and creativity and things like that. Now, to respond to your question, so first part and third part, the pattern of questions and answers is the same. How your examiner asks something and you have to immediately respond. There is no time for you to think about the question, because again, just as I mentioned earlier, it's a conversation going on. So your examiner asks something and then you have to immediately respond. So, but in the second part, you're given a minute to think about the topic and then you have to speak about it for 1 to 2 minutes. And just as I mentioned earlier, better for you would be to not stop until your examiner stops you. Now, the first part is going to be uh, of, I would say, about 4 to 6 or 7 minutes. There would be 2 to 3 topics, maybe hobbies, hometown, video games, artificial intelligence, friends, neighbors and neighborhood, mobile phones, movies, sports, exercise, so on and so forth. Any of these 3 topics or 2 topics. Then the second part, of course, there would be just one topic. In the third part, there can be 1 or 2 topics, but those 2 topics would be relevant to that which is discussed in the second part. And during the question and answer session, there would not be any time to think. The question would be asked and you have to immediately respond. The time for you to think about the topic is provided only in the or during the second part.
Hiba, does that answer your question?
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Wasim, please, you may now ask your question.
Okay, I have some little questions. What the best way to structure answer in part two? And the second one, how to handle unfamiliar topics in speaking. The third one, tips for improving fluency and pronunciation.
There was some distortion when you were asking the second question, but I would address first these 2 questions that I've heard, and then you can ask the second question again, right? So,
Okay.
what is the structure that you should be following during the second part? It's very easy. Remember that a good structure would always have an introduction, would always have a beginning, then there would be middle, then there would be an end. A good structure would always have an introduction, then in this case, few bullet points, and then conclusion. So there, I mean, this is the structure that you should be following. You should provide an introduction to what is it that you're going to talk about, or what is it that you have been asked to comment on. Then during the body or in the middle, you should address those bullet points that are provided to you in the cue card. Each cue card would have 3 to 4 bullet points. You can have those bullet points to answer the questions or to identify the body, or you can identify anything that you think you are comfortable speaking about, as long as it is related to the major question. This is very important. So um, that's how you should structure the body. That's how you should structure the middle of your response. And then you should move towards the conclusion of your response. And for conclusion, you should refer to the last question, which usually begins with the word explain. So again, to give you an example, uh, describe an occasion when you when you had to apologize from someone, right? So this forms the introduction. Describe an occasion when you had to apologize from someone. You should say when it was, what did you do, why did you have to apologize. So these 3 questions, I would keep these in mind to form the body or to form the middle of the response. And if you think that you would like to add to these bullet points, you're more than welcome to do that. And if you think that you would like to um, say something else other than these questions, then you're more than welcome to do that, as long as you're limiting your response to this question: describe an occasion when you had to apologize from someone. The last question would in this case be, and then explain how did you feel after extending that apology. So this would form your conclusion. In the conclusion part, or during the concluding part, you would discuss how is it that you felt after apologizing. So that's how you would structure. Quickly coming to your next question, how can you improve your fluency and pronunciation? This is something, again, I am very realistic, practical. The idea is not that this is something that cannot happen. The idea is that it is something that can happen, but it would take its due time. It would take its due time. You would have to be consistent. Uh, Keep listening to things. If you are listening more, your spoken would improve. Mark my words. If you are listening to things more, your spoken would automatically improve. And then, of course, you need to find an environment where you're able to speak in language which we have inherited from the colonial structure. It's not that language which we speak generally at home or with our friends. So you would have to find suitable environment for that. So you might want to enroll in our IELTS classes. We are launching this batch after Eid. You might want to join that. We are going to have one-on-one session. We are going to be doing your mocks, or you can find any of your friends who you think would be would be able to offer you some assistance, or would be happy to talk to you for good 20 to 30 minutes in English. What was your other question?
Okay.
Yeah.
How to handle the unfamiliar topics in speaking?
Yes, how to handle unfamiliar topics. Very good. So if you have watched that unfamiliar topic discussed in any series or movie, you can do that. Then if you think that you you may not have experienced that situation, but any of your friends might have had, and uh, your friend might have had a chance to share that with you. So applying that situation to yourself, you can do that. And then if nothing of none of these is working, or if nothing is working, then just use your imagination, make up stories. It would work, it should work, it works, it has worked. My students have got 7.5 making up stories. I still remember one of my students went on to even uh, his cue card was related to something in the present and future, and then he went on to uh, saying something like flying an aeroplane, and he got good scores. So
Okay, all clear, sir.
Thank you. Do we have more questions, or should we just move towards the conclusion of the first वेबिनार। जी, अगर कोई सवालात हैं तो प्लीज़ आप लोग हैंड रेज का ऑप्शन यूज़ कर सकते हैं इफ़ यू वांट टू आस्क दैट क्वेश्चन वर्बली, या यू कैन ऑल्सो पोस्ट योर क्वेश्चन इन द मीटिंग चैट. You can also ask your questions afterwards. Both I and Naeem are in the group, so you can directly message us, and we will respond as soon as we can. You can also give feedback on the session, and whether it is actually helpful for you guys, and whether you would like us to change our approach. So वो सारी चीज़ें भी आप हमारे साथ शेयर कर सकते हैं. I'm assuming कि कोई और सवाल नहीं है इस वक्त. ठीक है, ठीक है, चलें. um, चलें. आई होप यू फाउंड द सेशन टू बी वैल्यूएबल. आई विल at the end just you know would like to share our social media, or just our digital, the digital platforms on which we exist, and we would be really grateful if you can follow us on Instagram, and follow and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. I've provided the QR code for our Instagram page, and also the YouTube link. We also have a website. We don't have any information regarding IELTS on the website yet, but we have been doing other tests like the GRE, CSS, and we have lots of information on the website regarding those tests. Inshallah, soon we will have information about our IELTS courses also. But these are the places where you can find us on the internet, and please spread the word in case more people want to be a part of this learning journey. So with that, we conclude the session. Um, Gee, Samranullah, the app right now it does not have an IELTS course, but very soon we will have one on the Quva app also. इस वक्त उस पे जो हमारे कोर्सेज ऑन ऑफर हैं वो GRE और CSS रिलेटेड हैं, बट यू कैन यूज द ऐप फॉर दोज कोर्सेज. ठीक है. Any other question? Just if you found the session to be valuable, एक thumbs up का निशान बना दीजिए ताकि we can take some encouragement from that.
And if there's anything that you think we should be working on, or if there's anything that you think did not go as it should have gone, we are more than happy, or we would be more than happy to take that feedback in.
ठीक है, ठीक है. Yeah, we are getting those thumbs ups, and we are grateful. Thank you so much, everybody. Inshallah, our next webinar is on Sunday, same time, 9 p.m. And that I think is going to focus on the listening module. I hope I'm correct, Naeem.
Yes, this Sunday we are returning to talk about the listening module. Next Friday we will talk about the reading module, and the next Sunday we will wrap up this series by talking about the writing module.
बेहतरीन है. We are also recording these webinars, so and we will upload the webinars, the recordings on our YouTube channel. I will share the recordings in the WhatsApp group also, so that, and if anyone missed the first webinar, or you want to go over the tips and tricks that Naeem shared, uh, you can access the recording. And also please do visit our channel and subscribe to it. um Gee, Samranullah, we course material, we, as Naeem mentioned, Eid ke baad we are planning to launch our first proper um, full-fledged preparatory session. So usme phir we can, we will be uh, basically sharing course material there. ठीक है जी. चलें. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see most, if not all of you, on Sunday night. Thank you. खुदा हाफिज.